Good morning, beautiful people of planet Earth and all other interdimensional entities and all sentient beings. Thought I'd continue with reading from Mysteries of the Unexplained, and we're up to the chapter on monsters. So I've got to go for my debrief to see my worthy psychiatrist this afternoon, so I can probably read for, what's the time now, it's almost 10 a.m. Read for potentially 3 hours maximum, and then I'll have to do my little dash. Anyway, welcome to Titania's realm at Sacred Space. The time is 9:59 a.m. and it's the 19th of February 2025. Let us begin. So, a couple of pictures here. A 60-foot long sea monster passed just yards from the HMS Daedalus, according to Captain Peter McQuay in his official report to the British Admiralty, which, judging by the drawing of the ship, was a long, long time ago. "60 feet long. Bit creepy, isn't it? Down below we have the Electon crew members slung a noose around the tail of this giant squid, and we're about to haul it aboard when the rope slipped. They were left with only a 40-pound fragment, which is also a bit creepy, but sailors have long, all through, even up into Greek and Roman times, ancient times, have talked about the kraken, the giant sea squid, the sea monsters of the deep. And the kraken has indeed been discovered by modern science, so there are giant squids way, 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 way down in the deep. Makes you wonder what else is under there, doesn't it? Oh, I've just realised. I was wondering why that just started randomly in the middle of the page. That was on the second page. Never mind. You've seen a couple of pictures. While we're at showing the picture, we'll show the pictures first and get on with the reading from now on. But anyway, here's another one. Come to the surface. Missionary hunts Egede, a person of unquestioned integrity. Supplied one of the earliest reliable first-hand accounts of a sea serpent sighted near the coast of Greenland. You know what I think they are? I just think they're remnants of prehistoric creatures that are still living in the deep. That's what I think they are. That's just my theory. It's not based on actual scientific fact or anything. Just saying. Anyway, let us continue with reading. Monsters. Anthropologists, psychiatrists, and other students of human behaviour tend to interpret man's belief in monsters in terms of man's need for them. Why would you need a monster? I've been shucking off monsters since early fucking childhood, people of Earth. Mostly in human form too. Fucking things they were. Anyway, we won't dwell on that. I'm feeling better today. I had amazing healing sent to me by my shaman friend. To you, Michelle Citrine. And look, I'm getting better. The bruising's slightly improved. I've been taking arnica as well, which I think has helped, and putting aloe vera on. But anyway, let's be positive. I've healed myself a lot in the last 2 weeks. It's been a journey. It's been an emotional weeping and whelping as well. Wetting and whelping, I mean, sorry. And since the loss of Charlie as well, I've been really hammered at the beginning of this year. I hope the whole year doesn't go on like that, because it won't be survivable, people of Earth. It's just a little bit too much, especially struggling on my own. But I'm not on my own, am I? I just told you, had healing sent from my friend who lives in America. So I'm not actually alone. I just feel alone because I live alone. But beautiful people who do value and cherish me and respect me and are kind to me when I, get sick or get hurt. And I'm grateful to all of those wonderful humans who are not monsters, but earth angels who supported me over the decades, without whom I would not be here. And that's a fact, people of Earth. Anyway, let us continue. These experts hypothesize that we create monsters to give acceptable form to our unnamed anxieties, that we invent our monsters by projection, constructing brutish repositories for whatever is savage, libidinous, or otherwise undesirable in ourselves. I think that's a bit of a stretch, actually. Just saying. Or that we attempt to justify our fear of the unknown by exaggerating characteristics of any odd-looking and seldom-seen creatures to make them more terrifying than they actually are. Now that sentence I agree with, because I used to have a terrible fear of spiders, but I don't have that fear anymore. It just, I don't know. After one of my many near deaths, I just suddenly realised that everything is oneness, and even spiders aren't necessarily out to get you unless you poke at them or put your fingers right on them. Even redbacks try to avoid biting you, by the way. Once I discovered that, I calmed down about redbacks. But I'm ashamed to admit, when I first arrived in Brisbane, 1st of August 1988, I killed every redback I saw because I worried about them biting my very young children, who were, Crystal was 3 1/4 when we arrived, Jasmine was 14 months, so it wasn't a total irrational fear, but I industrialised it on a grand scale, and I feel bad about that. Every spider I save now, I'm going, I'm sorry what I did to all your fellow spiders. They didn't deserve that. They really didn't. It was just my irrational fear. It's amazing what happens when you overcome irrational fears of insects and, other kinds of vermin. I even had, you see it in my YouTube videos, a carpet snake move in near my back, not far from my back door, my back garden. She lived with me for 12 days till she shed her skin and moved on wherever she went. I don't know, maybe she's on the roof. Maybe she's still around somewhere. I haven't seen her since though. But I developed a real symbiosis and a deep love for that snake. It's amazing. And we didn't even get all that close to each other. Like I only got the closest I got to was about 1 metre away. And she just did this ever slight tiny little twitch to let me know that she thought I was too close, so I backed up. And I was fascinated with her. At first I was afraid, I was petrified, thought I could never live without her by my side, and then we fell in love. It is kind of a falling in love actually too. They say snakes can mesmerise you, but we weren't eyeball to eyeball looking into each other's eyes or anything, but she had a profound effect on me. She was a symbol of transformation, and boy, have I been put through the mincer since then, but it's okay. It's okay. Everything has its season. But I must say, I do miss my little bird Charlie. I really do. I've still got to get a frame for her card that Jared made of her about 6 months ago or so. And I must get that framed. But oh, my little girl. This morning I was outside putting aloe vera on the wound, and there were all the lorikeets in the African tulip tree twittering, getting drunk, I think. And I just looked up and thought, oh well, happiness and freedom and peace. It's all any of us can want, isn't it? So let us continue with the story. But modern man seems to have another need, to resist belief in the bizarre or paranormal, to deny the existence of what cannot be explained. I don't suffer from that problem. Quite happy to live in Titania's realm and live with the unknowable and unseeable, and know that all around me I'm surrounded by spirits and fae and love, and sometimes little tricks the spirits that play up when I get visitors. Little munchkins, they're like naughty little children. But most of all, it's just like confirmation that I'm not really alone, even though to all intents and purposes in 3D reality and physical reality I am quite alone. But you're never really alone, people of Earth. You've got your ancestors around you, spirits you can call on in times of trouble, so you're never really alone. Giants and fairy tales and Godzillas and King Kongs may very well serve as repositories for the nastiness in us, but we know these monsters are fiction. They are inventions of individuals. Does not follow that the Yeti is a creation of the imagination. The combined fear, it's a strange sentence that. They've just said they're inventions, and then it says it does not follow that it's a creation of the imagination, but if it's an invention, then it would indeed be a creation of the imagination. But it's not, because it's been seen by people in Mount Everest and the Himalayas. Anyway, let us continue. The combined fear and attraction of man for monster is as old as the existence of either. Throughout the ages, human beings have told of such prodigies as fire-breathing dragons, reptilian oddities with many appendages, man-shaped beings with hairy coats and bestial faces, and underwater colossuses with a penchant for overturning boats. It was a real danger in ancient times. Didn't have stabilizers on ships in those days, and even now I guess something large enough could probably cause enough damage to tip a ship over. These incredible creatures were not inventions, they were seen. Doubtless many were coloured by faulty observation, by exaggeration, even by a touch of poetic elaboration that wove them into myth to serve as foils for heroes, symbols clashing with symbols. But the raw materials, the observed phenomena were there, and something still is there, in spite of our post-medieval need to ridicule monster sightings as hallucination or hoax. The truth is that few of us in the scientific age really want to see or experience the inexplicable, And when we do, we distort the perception into something we can cope with. Many observers have gone through extraordinary mental gymnastics to persuade themselves that they did not see what they thought they saw. Bigfoot was a bear or a joker in a monkey suit. Honestly. The sea serpent must have been a trick of light, a breaking wave, a floating log, a tangle of seaweed, or 50 porpoises swimming in single file. As for sceptical non-witnesses, they would rather devise and swallow the most tortuous explanation than believe the most straightforward report. Current thinking about what we call monsters is that the ones still with us are probably explainable in terms of relicts or fossil species that have taken refuge in remote and almost impenetrable regions. This attitude, too, may be an expression of our need to demystify the mysterious in order to accept the unacceptable. Monsters come in two basic types, aquatic and terrestrial, although some monster buffs suggest an extraterrestrial link, in the case of the chupacabra, for example. Once in a while, an odd creature may turn out to be amphibious or ambiguous, and on occasion something flies past our startled vision and appears to be an incredible, winged unknown. Both categories are treated here according to the habitat of their choice, first water, then land, and presented in chronological order within each category. The skeptic who feels inclined to say, yes, but, after reading these reports, should note that hundreds of sightings have been omitted for each one included, and that many viewers are converted scoffers. So there. Monsters of lakes and seas before 1900. In July 1734, a Norwegian missionary named Hans Egede, voyaging to, I'm presuming I got that right, sorry Norwegians, voyaging to Greenland, spotted something incredible as his vessel neared the Danish colony of Good Hope on the Davis Strait. On the 6th, as he subsequently reported in straightforward terms, appeared a very terrible sea animal which raised itself so high above the water that its head reached above our main top. It had a long, sharp snout and blew like a whale, had broad, large flappers, and the body was, as it were, covered with a hard skin, and it was very wrinkled and uneven on its skin. Moreover, on the lower part it was formed like a snake, and when it went under water again, it cast itself backwards, and in doing so, it raised its tail above the water, a whole ship length from its body. That evening, we had very bad weather. Richard Carrington, Mermaids and Mastodons. Have me to sneeze again. I don't know what it is about sitting here, but I get the sneezes. Incontestably, the largest sea monster in the world was described by Eric L. Pontoppidan, Bishop of Bergen, in the Natural History of Norway, 1752 to 53. The kraken, as fishermen and the bishop called it, was so enormous that even when it surfaced, its whole body did not appear. Wrote Pontoppidan, its back or upper part, which seems to be in appearance about an English mile and a half in circumference. Some say more, but I choose the least for greater certainty. Looks at first like a number of small islands surrounded with something that floats and fluctuates like seaweeds. At last, several bright points or horns appear, which grow thicker and thicker the higher they rise above the surface of the water, and sometimes they stand up as high and large as the masts of middle-sized vessels. It seems these are the creature's arms, and it is said if they were to lay hold of the largest man of war, they would pull it down to the bottom. Bernard Heuvelmans, In the Wake of the Sea Serpents, pages 49 to 50. A sea serpent of impressive size was reputedly seen in and around Gloucester Harbour, Massachusetts, by many persons during the month of August 1817. Prompted by heated debate between believers and skeptics, a special committee of the Linnean Society of New England collected a sheaf of sworn statements from purported eyewitnesses. The affidavit of Matthew Gaffney, ship's carpenter, typically deposed that on the 14th day of August, AD 1817, between the hours of 4 and 5 o'clock in the afternoon, I saw a strange marine animal resembling a serpent in the harbour in said Gloucester. I was in a boat and was within 30 feet of him. His head appeared full, as large as a 4-gallon keg, his body as large as a barrel, and his length that I saw I should judge 40 feet at least. The top of his head was of a dark colour, and the under part of his head appeared nearly white, as did also several feet of his belly that I saw. I fired at him when he was the nearest to me. The creature, Gaffney went on, turned as if to charge the boat, then sank like a stone and reappeared some 100 yards away. It moved at a rate of about 1 mile per 2 or 3 minutes. It's interesting, isn't it? My former husband, when we were courting and later and early in the marriage, I refused to go after a while because he was sadistic and I couldn't stand watching it actually. I knew I'd married a monster by those behaviours. But anyway, he used to like to bring in massive big conger eels with all their rows of teeth and laugh at them thrashing about our 14-foot boat, and me jumping up in the bow, getting as far away from the thing as I possibly could, screaming. He thought that was entertaining, terrorising me with conger eels. Awful it was, and then he'd stab them with his gaff hook and laugh at them being in pain and writhing. Oh, he was a pig. He really was a pig. Anyway, the only good thing was I used to say to him, if you're going to bring that back to shore, I insist that you give it to, the Pacific Islanders or the Maori people who like to eat them. So don't waste that animal, which he did do. That's the only respectful thing he did. And I think it was mainly just to show off, oh, look what I brought back on my photo, I'm a big hero. Motherfucker. But anyway, so reading about this sea serpents brought all that memories back. Anyway, it's a long, long time ago, and don't have to worry about that now, do I? Captain Peter, I've got a fair bit of pain this morning. It's better, but it sometimes hurts. It's hurting more just where the skin's joining together. Oh well, I'll read on and I might go and take some painkillers because it's a little bit uncomfortable. Captain Peter McQuay, or McQuay, spelt M''Quhae. So I'm presuming it's McQuay. I don't know. I'm not Scottish. Captain Peter, I'm going to pronounce it that way anyhow. Captain Peter McQuay. See, I can't do it. Captain Peter McQuay and most of the officers and crew of HMS Daedalus were treated to the sight of a sea serpent of extraordinary dimensions, quote unquote, while on passage from the East Indies to Plymouth, England in 1848. My goodness, that's really ouching. Ouchie, ouchie, ouchie. In a detailed, maybe if I move my arm in another position. In a detailed matter-of-fact statement dated October 11, Captain McQuay advised the Lords of the Admiralty that at 5 p.m. on August the 6th, the Daedalus, then being in the South Atlantic, 300 miles off the western coast of Africa, quote, something very unusual was seen by Mr. Sartoris midshipman, rapidly approaching the ship from before the beam. Mr. Sartoris immediately reported the circumstance to Captain McQuay and two officers walking the quarter-deck. See how I hate failing? It really upsets me, doesn't it? I'm the queen of failure. I hate it, but I really struggle with it so much. Never mind people there. And two officers walking the quarter-deck. What they and several other incredulous viewers saw was an enormous, undulating, snake-like thing with head and shoulders kept about 4 feet constantly above the surface of the sea. Well, if it was undulating and snake-like, how do they know it was the head and shoulders? I mean, I believe them, but anyway. As nearly as the men could judge by making a comparison with the length of their main topsail yard, the serpent's visible length was a good 60 feet. Its diameter behind the head was 15 or 16 inches, and there appeared to be some kind of mane down the creature's back. Mane. Maybe it was just seaweed. Interesting, isn't it? Oh, that was the picture I showed you earlier that they well, they didn't put a mane on that one. Maintaining its course to the southwest at a pace of 12 to 15 miles per hour, The creature passed the daedalus rapidly, but, stated McQuay, so close under our lee quarter that, had it been a man of my acquaintance, I should easily have recognised his features with the naked eye. I would have screamed my guts out. I would have screamed my guts out, people of Earth. It was way, way bigger than a conger eel, which are enormous, those things. By the gods, they're enormous. Not a good memory. During passage from Cadiz, Spain to Tenerife, the French sloop Unexplained encountered a monstrous sea creature on November 30, 1816. Sorry, I read that wrong. 1861. My brain just transposed those numbers. 1861, people of Earth. Though there was something of a swell, the weather was extremely favourable, and Lieutenant Bouillet, commander of the ship, resolved to attempt the capture of what he later reported to have recognised as the poulpe géant, the giant squid, whose existence has been so much disputed and now seems to be relegated to the realms of myth. Well, not anymore. Let's Google it. We want, because this book is old and, a little bit behind the times, given its age. No, we don't want to watch that video of myself. Just a moment. I want to know. I want to know, people of Earth, when was the Kraken recently scientifically proven? See what it comes up with. Something about it in 2013. Oh, well, a giant squid anyway. Well, anyway, you can take your time to research that a bit more, but I'm fairly sure it's been proven to be real. Giant squids, that is. And how big they get, way, way down in the deep. They've been seen throughout history, so they are real. But the swell caused the Electron to roll wildly, and the few bullets that hit the creature had no effect. Eventually, Bouillet and his men managed to harpoon the thing and sling a noose around its tail. Tentacles waving violently, the quarry snapped the harpoon and tore most of its body free. The crew hauled aboard a mere portion of the tail, weighing about 40 pounds. Yet both officers and men had come close enough to the creature to give a detailed description of it. Reporting to the Minister of the Navy, Bouillet wrote, "It was in fact the giant calamari." Well, it is, technically. That's what it's called. But the shape of the tail suggested it belonged to a species not yet described. The body seemed to measure about 15 to 18 feet in length. The head had a parrot-like beak surrounded by 8 arms between 5 and 6 feet long. In aspect it was quite appalling, brick red in colour, shapeless and slimy, its form repulsive and terrible. Well, I think Mrs. Giant Squid might beg to say otherwise. It's only repulsive to us because we're not accustomed to seeing them. Just saying. An inland water monster that has never been hooked, though reportedly several times seen, is an elusive creature dwelling in 100-mile-long Lake Champlain, which links Vermont and New York State with Canada. One of the first descriptions of it was made on August 30, 1878, by 6 people on a small yacht. What they saw was an extraordinary living thing with, as one observer said, 2 large folds just back of the head projecting above the water, and at some distance, say 50 feet or more behind, 2 or more folds at what was apparently the tail. It's odd, isn't it? Must have been like kind of flippers at the head and at the tail, and the rest of it must have looked a bit like a sea serpent. Later this monster, or perhaps a descendant, would become known as Champ. It has consistently been reported over the years, and as recently as 1981. So presumably, unless it's been poisoned by our toxicity leaching into everything, its descendants are still under there. Thimble Tickle, Newfoundland, was the scene of a monstrous fish sighting on November 2, 1878. 3 local fishermen were out in a boat not far offshore when they saw a bulky object which they took to be part of a wreck. Rowing up to it, they found to their disbelief that it was a huge marine creature, glassy-eyed and frenziedly thrashing its tentacles and tail, for it had been grounded by the ebbing tide. They snagged the monster with a barbed grapnel and attached the hook to a rope which they lashed to a tree. The creature struggled for a while, then, as the water continued to recede, it died. The length of the body, as estimated by the 3 men, was 20 feet from its beak to the tip of the tail. A tentacle measured 35 feet. Unmindful of scientists or skeptics, the fishermen chopped their catch into dog meat. Well, that's a shame, isn't it? Could have actually had, some kind of proof of its existence. It must have been a vastly surprised Mr. Hode of Adelaide, Australia, who, while walking along Brungle Creek one day in the early fall of 1883, came upon the remains of an unwieldy creature. The thing was pig-like in form, with a headless trunk and an appendage that curved inward like the tail of a lobster. Needless to say, it has never been identified. From 1900 to 1970. Surveying the Amazon basin for the Royal Geographical Society of London in 1907, Major Percy Fawcett could not at first credit local tales of outsized snakes inhabiting the swamps and rivers. But, as he was to write in his memoirs, personal experience convinced him they were true. Fawcett and his Indian crew were slowly drifting down the sluggish Rio Abuna when, almost under the bow of their flimsy boat, there appeared a triangular head and several feet of undulating body. It was a giant anaconda. I sprang for my rifle as the creature began to make its way up the bank, and hardly waiting to aim, smashed a .44 soft-nosed bullet into its spine, 10 feet below the wicked head. At first there was a flurry of foam and several heavy thumps against the boat's keel, shaking as though we had run on a snag. We stepped ashore and approached the reptile with caution. It was out of action, but shivers ran up and down the body like puffs of wind on a mountain tarn. As far as it was possible to measure, a length of 45 feet lay out of the water, and 17 feet in it, making a total length of 62 feet. On a return trip to London, Fawcett was branded a liar for his claim that he had bagged a 62-foot anaconda. That animal, scientists declared, could not possibly measure more than about 45 feet. Therefore, the observer's story was fantastic. My biological grandfather, that is my mother's natural father, who only told her that when she was 16, by the way, so she cut him out of her life and never spoke to him again. But anyway, he told her that he was a ship's carpenter on the old style sailing ships, but he gave up the sea because he went to the Amazon and witnessed one of his shipmates get swallowed whole by an anaconda, and he said he was so terrified by witnessing that he got straight back on the ship, returned to Germany and gave up the sea. Father Victor Heinz, while going about the Lord's work in South America, as they used to make a bad habit of doing, inflicting themselves upon the innocent natives. Just saying, you can tell I'm a shaman, that I identify always with the indigenous peoples of this earth. By the gods, literally by the gods. Saw what he thought was a water snake, very much larger than Fawcett's anaconda. The priest, who happened to be a close friend of Lorenz Hagenbeck, a famous German animal dealer and zoo director, reported, during the great floods of 1922, on May 22, at about 3 o'clock, I was being taken home by canoe on the Amazon from Óbidos, Brazil. Suddenly I noticed something surprising in midstream. I distinctly recognized a giant water snake at a distance of some 30 yards. Coiled up in 2 rings, the monster drifted quietly and gently downstream. My quaking crew had stopped paddling. Thunderstruck, we all stared at the frightful beast. I reckoned that its body was as thick as an oil drum, and that its visible length was some 80 feet. When we were far enough away, and my boatmen dared to speak again, they said that the monster would have crushed us like a box of matches. if it had not previously consumed several large capybaras, giant rodents. Terrifying thought, isn't it? Driving south from Inverness along the shore of Loch Ness on their way to the little town of Foyers were Mr. and Mrs. George Spicer, a London businessman, and his wife. It was the afternoon of July 22, 1933, and the Spicers were enjoying a relaxing Scottish vacation. Suddenly the bracken on the hillside about 200 yards ahead became agitated, and from it emerged an enormous, long-necked animal. Moving jerkily, the hulk crossed the narrow road. Astounded, Spicer stepped on the gas for a closer view, but by the time he and his wife reached the spot, the creature had lumbered through the bushes on the loch side and disappeared. Describing their encounter to the press shortly afterward, the Spicers said that the creature was about 6 feet long and stood or lumbered 4 feet high. In later tellings, the creature grew to a length of 25 or 30 feet. They also recalled that its neck undulated in the manner of a scenic railway. In addition to these oddities, the extraordinary creature was a terrible dark elephant grey of a loathsome texture, reminiscent of a snail. Thus, possibly maligned as to its looks, did the Loch Ness monster become a public figure. I'm not sure why they would think it looks like a snail. Maybe it was, had slime oozing off it or something. I mean, snails are quite slimy creatures when you hold them in your hand after rain. And of course, I haven't done that really since childhood because I'm not overly fond of slugs and snails. I find them quite repulsive too. Sometimes I used to kill them quite mercilessly too. Guilty as charged. And it's mean in a way to kill snails because, they're not poisonous. They don't do anything to you. Just slime on you. It's the worst that could happen. But anyway, after a while I outgrew wanting to kill them. I've so many little geckos and lizards around my garden that I don't get snails very often, and everything's a perfect ecosystem, yeah? Everything, even my family of spiders that I let live for several weeks because I knew ultimately that birds would take them. They all died the week Charlie died, which I thought was interesting timing. It's like she upped and died, and then I went out to say good morning to my spider family thinking, oh well, there's some life form that is happy to see me, and they were all gone. I actually got quite upset about that, to be honest. I don't know why. I think it was just one fucking thing too many. But anyway, the creature had been seen many times before by people frequenting the loch and its environs, including the Irish Saint Columba in AD 565. But Mr. Spicer's description of it in a letter to the press publicised what has become the world's most famous monster, Nessie. Many more such sightings were to follow. From Peter Costello in Search of Lake Monsters. Road running was an uncharacteristic performance by Nessie, but one that it repeated on the brightly moonlight moonlit night of January 5, 1934. At about 1 a.m., a young medical student named Arthur Grant was whizzing along the Loch Road near Loch End when he saw a large, dark blob shadowed by the bushes along the road ahead. As he approached, the object bounded across the road, almost colliding with Grant's motorcycle. In the moonlight, the young man saw a creature with a small, eel-like head with oval eyes, a long neck, a bulky body thickening toward a long, rounded-off tail, and 4 flipper-like legs. It was, he thought, about 18 to 20 feet long and had a dark skin, rather like a whale's. Leaping off his machine, Grant pursued the creature as it loped rapidly away and splashed into the loch. Grant marked the spot by the road and upon reaching home, drew a sketch of the monster. Knowing something of natural history, Grant declared some time later, "I can say that I have never seen anything in my life like the animal I saw. It looked like a hybrid, a cross between a plesiosaur and a member of the seal family." This model of Ogopogo, Canada's Okanagan Lake monster, was based upon descriptions given by several people who claim to have seen the creature. It's interesting that it's got like kind of ears on them. Can you see it? Kind of horns on top. Interesting. Just gonna pop to get a drink of water because my throat's dry and closing up. I'll be back. 1 moment, people. 1 moment. Okay, 2 moments. Maybe 3 moments. Maybe. Never mind. I'm back with chocolate. I've had pizza for breakfast and now I'm having chocolate. I'm a very bad timer. Very bad timer indeed. But I'm not well, so I'm not going to feel guilty for enjoying simple pleasures in life like chocolate and nice cold water. Oh, needed that by the gods. Right, where were we? Two Canadian duck hunters who were working on the rocky shore of South Pender Island off Vancouver, British Columbia, flushed unlikely game on the morning of February 4th, 1934, bringing down a duck that flopped, badly wounded, into the water. Cyril H. Andrews and Norman Georgeson hopped into their small boat to retrieve it. As they approached their bird, they saw a head and two loops or segments of something quite unfamiliar rising clear of the water. Don't mind me, but there's hazelnuts and it's a bit hard to chomp down on hazelnuts and read at the same time. I know. Multitasking. Walk and talk, walk and talk. Can I mention, by the way, that it's absolutely delicious. Mesmerised, the hunters watched the monster, which was only 10 feet away. That would freak me out. As it opened its large mouth, gulped down the duck, snapped at several seagulls, then sank from view. It was hungry. They noted its saw-like teeth, its pointed tongue, its grey-brown coloration, and the horse-like shape of the head. I like horses. It's a seahorse. Not, but something similar. Andrews leapt ashore and ran for a phone, rushing to the loch, Justice of the Peace. G.F. Parkin of Bedwell Harbour, and several others arrived in time to see the creature swimming about 20 yards from the shore, its body undulating rhythmically and its head apparently resting on the water. Sounds very relaxed and happy to me. Andrews estimated it to be about 40 feet in length and 2 to 3 feet in diameter at the thickest part, with a head some 3 feet long. It's not that big. I'm not showing you that. I suppose if you had a small boat and a big head like that came at you, it's big enough. It's bigger than a kangaroo head. Not much bigger though. Oh, it was awful. Oh, let's not have those memories. Hit the reset button. Beep, 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 beep. Happy thoughts, happy thoughts. Oh, I just dropped from Luke's keyring, which I'll need to get to him. It's been a couple of weeks now. I'll have to give it to him at the Brooklyn Standard. So I was thinking about posting it to him, but I'll just woman up do my dance as I always do, give it to him in person like a match. Now, where was I? For 15 minutes on October 8, 1936, the alleged resident monster of Loch Ness showed itself near Urquhart Castle, a ruin on a promontory jutting into the lake. Sorry, a ruin on a promontory, jutting into the lake. First seen about 500 yards from shore by a cottager. Who lived above the shore road. The beast soon attracted 2 tour buses and several carloads of viewers. About 50 people, several of them armed with telescopes or binoculars, watched the creature's sedate passage through the calm loch waters. Their concurring description was of something with 2 humps behind a head and neck. Then, suddenly, the creature was no longer there. Okanagan Lake in British Columbia, connected to the Pacific via the Columbia River, is said to be the habitat of a huge aquatic animal popularly known as ogopogo. Reported about 200 times since the year 1700, the creature was observed at close range by several people on July 2, 1949. Mr. Leslie L. Carey of Kelowna, having left his wife at their house overlooking the lake, was treating the W.F. Watson family of Montreal to a boat ride when they spotted a large snake-like form in the water, undulating vertically. That's a scary thought, isn't it? The object travelled sometimes above and sometimes below the surface of the water, of the lake, sorry. The people in the boat, adults and children, saw a body about 30 feet long and perhaps a foot in diameter, with a forked tail that lashed up and down. Mrs. Carey saw the event from the shore and called her neighbours, Dr. and Mrs. Stanley Underhill. All rushed down to the beach and trained binoculars upon the creature, which remained in view for at least 15 minutes. Dr. Underhill described it as smooth and black and having undulations or coils about 7 feet long. He thought there were at least 2 creatures because of the distance between some of the coils. Ogopogo, it would seem, is not alone, nor should she be. Everyone deserves their true love, even sea monsters. Just saying. Representatives of the media seldom have the good fortune to be present at a monster sighting, but one journalist boating on Okanagan Lake near the town of Vernon got lucky on July 17 1959, although not lucky enough to have a camera handy. Mr. R. H. Miller, editor of the Vernon Advertiser, was accompanied by his wife, their friends Mr. and Mrs. Pat Martin, and the Martins' son Murray. They were on their way home early that evening when Miller noticed a large creature following in the wake of their motor cruiser at a distance of about 250 feet. Pat Martin, who was steering, turned the boat around for a better view. As they slowly drew closer, the Millers and Martins studied the creature through binoculars and were unable to reconcile its blunt-nosed, snake-like head with that of any animal they knew. Itself apparently none too pleased at what it saw, the creature gradually submerged and disappeared from view. One man who became a devoted pursuer of the Loch Ness Monster began his search in the spring of 1960. Tim Dinsdale of Reading, England, arrived at the loch equipped with camping gear and a 16mm movie camera, prepared to spend all of 6 days watching for the creature. On April 23, his last day of surveillance, he was staring out across the loch from an elevation of 300 feet when he saw a motionless object on the surface of the water. Estimating the range at about 1,300 yards, Dinsdale trained his binoculars on the object and saw a mahogany-coloured shape with a dark blotch on its left side. It began to move. Dinsdale turned to his camera and started filming, following the shape as it zigzagged across the loch and submerged, resurfacing and submerging again over a distance of 500 yards. The result was a grainy but exciting piece of film showing a living creature whose appearance matched many eyewitness descriptions of the creature in the lake. At least one previously sceptical scientist was persuaded that there was indeed something unaccountable and worth searching for in the waters of Loch Ness. Dinsdale was understandably gratified by his success and conveyed something of what he had felt while filming when he later wrote, Through the magic lens of my camera, I had reached out across 1,000 yards and more to grasp the monster by the tail. An expedition from Moscow University surveying the mineral deposits of eastern Siberia from June to October 1964 paused at Lake Kaya to check out rumours of a resident monster. According to a Komsomolskaya Pravda article written by G. Rokosoev, deputy leader of the team, biologist N. Gladkich, literally ran into it quite unexpectedly. Rokosoev explained, Here is how it happened. Gladkich went out to the lake to draw water and saw a creature that had crawled out onto the shore, apparently to eat the grass. A small head on a long gleaming neck, a huge body covered with a jet black skin, a vertical fin along the spine. Greatly alarmed, Gladkich hurried back to the team's base with his news. Members of the unit, arming themselves with cameras and rifles, rushed down to the lake shore, but the monster was gone. Nothing remained of its passage but trampled grass and a slight ripple on the surface of the water. Quickly, Gladkich made a sketch of what he had seen, little knowing that his monster would have looked remarkably familiar to witnesses of the creature at Loch Ness. Any doubts about Gladkich's credibility? I can't even speak English now. Credibility vanished when the creature reappeared and was seen by the leader of the expedition and several team members as well, wrote Rokosuev. Suddenly a head appeared in the centre of the lake, then a dorsal fin. The creature bet the water with its long tail, producing waves on the lake. You can imagine our astonishment when we saw with our own two eyes that the stories were true. And here's a sketch drawn by the biologist N. Gladkich, whom I cannot pronounce his name, but it does indeed look a lot like Nessie. Two paratroopers on leave from the British Army, Captain John Ridgway and Sergeant Che Blythe, spent 92 days rowing across the Atlantic in 1966 on a self-imposed survival test that, as it turned out, included a strange encounter. In the pre-dawn of July 25, the sergeant was sound asleep, and Ridgway, drowsy himself, was mechanically pulling at the oars of their 20-foot open boat when something disturbed the still darkness. As Ridgway wrote afterward, I was shocked to full wakefulness by a swishing noise to starboard. Starboard is on the right. Just a few landlubbers that don't know that, or those of you who are still quite young. I looked out into the water and suddenly saw the writhing, twisting shape of a great creature. It was outlined by the phosphorescence in the sea, as if a string of neon lights were hanging from it. It was an enormous size, some 35 or more feet long, and it came towards me quite fast. I must have watched it for some 10 seconds. It headed straight at me and disappeared right beneath me. It's lucky it didn't tip the boat over. Almost paralysed by this apparition, Ridgway stopped rowing. After a moment, he forced himself to turn and look for it. He saw nothing, but a few seconds later he heard a most tremendous splash, as if the monster had surfaced and then crashed back into the sea. Ridgway was shaken. His account continues. I am not an imaginative man, and I searched for a rational explanation. Che and I had seen whales and sharks, dolphins and porpoises, flying fish, all sorts of sea creatures, but this monster in the night was none of these. I reluctantly had to believe that there was only one thing it could have been: a sea serpent. Rightly expecting incredulity, Ridgway concluded, I can only tell what I saw with my own eyes, and I am no longer a disbeliever. From a book they both wrote called A Fighting Chance. John Ridgway and Che Blythe, who rowed across the Atlantic in the summer of 1966, were threatened by a sea serpent almost twice the length of their open boat, as depicted in this artist's rendition of the encounter. I mean, he looks quite friendly there. It's almost like he's just saying, oh, g'day, what you doing there, boys? I guess they were lucky it wasn't hungry. I presume it wasn't hungry, so it didn't try to devour them, so they were lucky indeed. 7 members of an Irish family who lived among the lakes and peat bogs of Connemara in West Ireland watched a large beast disport itself in Lough Nahuan from, is it Lough or would that be pronounced Lough? Anyway, I don't speak Gaelic, obviously. Duh. Can barely pronounce English some days. Anyway, Lough Nahuan, from sunset until dark on the evening of February 22, 1968. Farmer Stephen Coyne, accompanied by one of his sons and the family dog, had gone down to a bog near the Lough early that evening to get some dry peat when he noticed something black in the water. As he and the boys stared at it, they saw that it was an animal, but an altogether strange kind of creature. It had a pole-like neck and head close to a foot in diameter, a flat tail and a slick skin. It was swimming about aimlessly, turning from one direction to another when the dog started barking excitedly. Attracted by the yapping, the creature glided toward the shore and opened its mouth in an intimidating manner. But when Coyne reached for his dog, the thing swerved off and continued swimming about in a desultory way. Coyne went on watching while the boy ran home to get his mother. Mrs. Coyne and the rest of the small Coyneses hastened to the, I'm presuming it's Lough, it's just spelt differently, to see the extraordinary sight. As the creature ducked and reared, the family saw that it was about 12 feet long, with 2 humps on its back and horn-like protuberances on its head, but had no eyes. How can that be? Once the creature's tail flipped up close to the head, so that the body formed an almost complete loop or circle. Clearly it was not only long but very flexible. All 7 Coinses watched until the daylight faded, then went home with a great deal to talk about. From Alien Animals by Janet and Colin Ward. Five young water skiers, ranging in age from 14 to 21, were cutting a swathe across Okanagan Lake, or Okanagan. I think it's Okanagan Lake. Yes, I've heard it pronounced that way somewhere. Okanagan Lake. When they said they had a close-up view of Canada's Ogopogo, which I'm probably still pronouncing wrong. Oh my goodness, too funny. On July 23rd, 1968, Cherie Campbell, on skis behind the motorboat, was the first to see the long shape floating lazily on the surface of the water. Startled at the sight of 20 feet of unexpected creature, she let go of the tow rope and nervously trod water until her friends in the boat came back to pick her up. By that time, Ogopogo was moving. The youngsters decided to follow the beast for a closer look and, as they claimed afterward, got within 5 feet of it, close enough, according to Cherie, to see blue green-grey scales that glittered in the sun. Sounds quite pretty, doesn't it? At that point, Ogopogo abruptly submerged and swam off with surprising speed, leaving a wake of V-shaped waves. Although they chased it in their motorboat at 40 miles per hour, the young people fell behind and soon lost sight of the monster. Going to have to stop soon. I'm feeling a bit dizzy and weak. Dizzy and weak, people of Earth. Well, I'll read on a bit more and then I'll stop. There's quite a bit more on water creatures. Quite a bit more goes on for quite some pages, and then it goes on to land monsters. So this is going to be, if I read the whole chapter, quite a few videos, people of Earth. That's okay. What else could I be doing with my time? A lot. Could be making jewellery, could be writing a book, could be going on adventures, could be making love with some fabulous man who adores me. But none of that's going to happen right now, so moving on, before you all get terribly excited. Calm your farm, boys. None of that's going to be happening. I'm waiting for the one. Loch Moreau. Someone yelled out, "You'll be waiting a bloody long time then, Tanya." It's all good. Next dimension. I don't care. Doesn't bother me in the slightest. Loch Moreau of Inverness County is one of a group of lakes in northern Scotland that is frequently reported to be inhabited by creatures similar to those said to be living in Loch Ness. Although sightings at Loch Morar can be traced back to 1887, it was not until 1969 that Nessie's competition came to be named Morag. The occasion was a nerve-shattering one. You can tell I'm struggling because my reading's getting slower. Oh well, 'tis what it is. The occasion was a nerve-shattering one for Duncan MacDonald and William Simpson, who were heading home across the loch in their motor cruiser on a hot summer's afternoon on August 19, at the end of a pleasant day of fishing. The two men reckoned it was time for a cup of tea. Probably is too. And Simpson went into the cabin to put the kettle on, while MacDonald steered. As MacDonald later told author Elizabeth Campbell during her inquiry into Morag, I heard a splashing or disturbance in the water astern of us. I looked up, and about 20 yards behind us, this creature was coming directly after us, in our wake. It only took a matter of seconds to catch up on us. It grazed the side of the boat. I'm quite certain this was unintentional. When it struck the boat, it seemed to come to a halt, or at least slow down. I grabbed the oar and was attempting to fend it off, my one fear being that if it got under the boat, it might capsize it. Bill Simpson felt the impact and saw the tea kettle slide and fall, spilling water over the burner and drowning the flames. He turned off the gas and leapt to the deck, where he saw MacDonald shoving at the creature with his oar. For several moments the two men struggled to keep the monster from overturning the boat. It was an enormous, unprepossessing thing and utterly strange, being 25 to 30 feet long and having a large snake-like head about a foot wide, a back with 3 humps raised about 18 inches above the surface of the water, and rough textured, dirty brown skin. The oar snapped. One of the men grabbed a rifle, loaded it, and fired. The creature slowly sank. The two fishermen went home with all possible speed, as much appalled by their encounter with the impossible as by the beast's appearance. I don't want to see it again, Bill Simpson would say. I was terrified. Judging by the way it chased them, it was probably hoping to, capsize the boat and feast on them too. Since 1970. In 1970, after almost 40 years of sightings reported by reputable witnesses, Loch Ness was visited by a well-equipped expedition consisting of members of the Boston-based Academy of Applied Science in cooperation with the British Loch Ness Investigation Bureau. The team's primary mission was to find evidence of large moving objects in the loch. Using a new high-frequency side-scan sonar designed by underwater engineer Martin Klein, himself on the scene as one of the Academy's monster hunters, the investigators made a number of intriguing contacts with moving but unidentifiable targets of various sizes. At the end of October, a series of particularly successful sonar hits was made while the apparatus was rigged near a pier in Urquhart Bay. Something massive floated through the sonar beam not far from the pier. Then, at successive intervals of 10 or 15 minutes, similar but larger objects were detected from greater distances. Whatever they were, these objects apparently moved of their own accord and were from 10 to 50 times larger than the fish registered by the apparatus. The contacts were compelling, if not conclusive, evidence of large mysterious creatures in Loch Ness. telephone interview with Martin Klein, Salem, New Hampshire, as reported in the Technology Review, March to April 1976. California is richly endowed with almost everything, but it is unaccountably short of water monsters. One, however, has reportedly been seen from time to time in Lake Elsinore near Riverside since 1884. A lakesider named Bonnie Prey said she saw it twice in 1970. According to her, it is a snake-like 12-footer, about 3 feet thick, that travels through the water with an up and down undulating motion, unlike a snake, which wiggles horizontally. Subsequently, 3 Elsinore State Park officials crossing the lake claimed that they saw a similar creature surface about 50 feet from their boat. Too bemused for accurate observation, they gave conflicting descriptions but agreed that the thing was very odd. The White River at Newport, Arkansas, was the scene of several sightings in the 1970s. On July 28, 1971, Cloyce Warren of the White River Lumber Company went fishing with 2 friends. Mooring their boat just south of the White River Bridge, they cast their lines. Suddenly the 3 men were astounded to see a huge column of water belching skyward from a point about 200 feet away. I didn't know what was happening, Warren later told reporters. This giant form rose to the surface and began moving in the middle of the river away from the boat. It was very long and grey-coloured. We had taken a little Polaroid swinger camera with us to take pictures of the fish we caught. I grabbed the camera and managed to get a picture right before it submerged. It appeared to have a spiny backbone that stretched for 30 or more feet. It was hard to make out exactly what the front portion looked like, but it was awful large. The Newport Daily Independent published the picture 2 days later. The White River monster, seen in the distance, was slightly blurred around the edges, but appeared to be a large creature as yet unidentified. They've got a photo here, but I actually can't make anything out, so I'm not going to bother showing it to you. We'll just go on the report of what they saw. I guess it's not very clear, but maybe that's like the head. Just sort of looks a bit like Chinese dragon, if that's what I'm supposed to be looking at. But anyway, might just be a splash of water too. Oh yes, you can kind of see ridges along the surface of the water there. Let me just show you in that line there. But anyway, Mama T, who has a terrible phobia of they weren't giant, they were normal sized conger eels, being reeled into our boat, would really freak out if I saw something like that when I'm out on the boat in the lake or out at sea, especially out at sea. Anyway, I'm going to stop there because I don't feel well and I need to stop, and I'll come back and finish this in another video, perhaps this afternoon after I've had my debrief, or perhaps tomorrow. See how we go. what looks like an impending storm coming, which might explain why I feel all wavery and flubbery and out of sorts as well. So on that note, I bid you still morning, good morning, 11:33 a.m. on the 19th of February. Have a beautiful day wherever you are on planet Earth or in the space-time continuum, and watch out for sea monsters. They're out there, and so are we. Bye for now, planet Earth. Have a lovely day.